Trump's a master salesman, isn't he? And he always he gets his point across. You can argue whether he's being fully truthful or not, but at least you kind of know where he's coming from. And he is very, for all the kind of freewheeling and freelancing that Trump does, he's actually pretty good at staying on message. It maybe takes him a little while to get there.
Welcome to The Debrief, where we talk with the Washington Examiner's top journalists about the headlines they're covering and where the story's going next. I'm Sarah Bedford, and I'm here with Managing Editor Chris Irvine.
Hello.
Chris, there were some polls out this week with some not great news for Joe Biden. A Wall Street Journal poll had some warning signs for the president. What did we learn from those polls?
Huge warning signs, really, for him. The big headline, of course, is that Biden is down in 6 of the 7 what you would consider swing battleground states, and in the 7th one, it was a dead heat. It was in Wisconsin, and I'm not sure necessarily it's news that Joe Biden is unpopular. But at some point, maybe it will be over the summer, I expect maybe Biden to gain a little bit of a momentum, but he's certainly not looking good right now. And there was results in Wisconsin in particular on Tuesday that show that he could be in a pretty precarious position, and everything's looking pretty rosy for Trump right now. So yeah, well, it's
rough.
I have no idea what Biden's going to do about it.
Yeah, rough for Biden. And we're not really seeing any inklings of a strategy from Biden, right? I mean, if you really had to sum up in like 3 sentences, what is Joe Biden running on? Could you do it?
Oh gosh, I don't know, because he had Bidenomics, but he doesn't talk about Bidenomics anymore.
Right, the people didn't like that one.
Right, exactly. And then what else is there really? I'm kind of at a loss.
Exactly. Do you think that's part of his problem, is that you can't articulate what he's running on, and voters are unhappy and they're not hearing any answers to their questions, right?
I mean, I guess you could argue student loans, but even that's been kind of fraught with difficulty, whether that will kind of come back to help him in the end. Democrats as a whole are pretty successful when it comes to fighting for abortion, but I haven't picked up much from Biden himself wanting to kind of get into the mud on that, and Trump doesn't seem to want to kind of get into the mud on that either. Trump has a sort of disengagement when it comes to abortion, and because I think he knows it's something that Republicans really, really struggle with. So if Biden can't attack him on that, and then also there's Biden for years and years has been the I'm not Trump candidate, and I think you and I talked about it last week. We kind of know everything that there is to know about Trump and Biden.
Right.
So at some point you have to sort of stop being negative and be positive. Now, Donald Trump's relentlessly negative about stuff, but at least he does have a sort of somewhat optimistic vision of, if you vote for me, I'll finish what I started and America will be great again. And so Biden is sort of playing defense. I feel like he's just not resonating with voters, and I don't fully know what he's running on.
Yeah, but it sounds like you summed up pretty well. You can articulate kind of what Trump is running on, right?
Right. Yeah, I mean, Trump's a master salesman, isn't he? And he always he gets his point across. You can argue whether he's being fully truthful or not, but at least you kind of know where he's coming from, and he is very. For all the kind of freewheeling and freelancing that Trump does, he's actually pretty good at staying on message. It maybe takes him a little while to get there.
Better
during the
this
speech.
time. We haven't heard any like John McCain rants about prisoners of war or anything like that in weeks, actually.
Yeah,
so.
It's like that thing of sort of X number of days since the last accident in The Simpsons.
Right. We're actually in a pretty long spell right now.
Yeah, so I mean, maybe it's also because not as many people are watching Trump's rallies. They're not on TV as much as they used to be. In order to kind of watch them relentlessly, you need to go on YouTube, and you've got to be a real sicko to do that, So,
right.
But he definitely feels more disciplined this time around.
Interesting. Do you think that in an effort, the corporate media famously stopped showing Trump rallies because they thought that, this is platforming misinformation or lies or whatever, do you think that will backfire in that people are really not being exposed to the Trump craziness, and they're able to kind of have the fond memories of when they could afford their groceries as the only essence of Trump?
Maybe. I mean, I think the I think being out of sight, out of mind does help a little bit. Although Trump, he's not really out of sight. It's just those rallies are pretty. They can be pretty kind of wild at times. So maybe the fact that he's less exposed, certainly on those channels. I mean, even Fox News isn't showing him as much as they used to. That when you kind of hear one for maybe you've heard the first one in a few weeks, or you hear a victory rally, or you maybe hear him outside a court. That seems to be how we hear him most of the time these days. Then his message seems a little bit fresher, and it's not just the same old, same old. So, yeah, maybe it could work to his advantage.
And finally, one of the reasons why Biden is struggling in the polls is because he's losing his left flank with the way that he's handled the war in Israel. And this week, we've kind of seen how thorny this is for Israel and the U.S. with the accidental killing of some aid workers.
Yeah.
Israel apologized, acknowledged the mistake, but does this kind of show that this is a sort of win-less situation for Israel and the
U.S.?
Yeah,
I think it is. I think this aid convoy being hit is a horrible, horrible tragedy, and Israel has been quite forthright, and they're investigating, and I think Israel knows that they really kind of screwed up here. You never obviously want to see that happen in war, but Israel, I do feel, is they're damned if they do and damned if they don't, because for so long, and this war's been going on for more than 6 months now, I think Israel has been quite restrained at times, where it took a few weeks for them to go into Gaza. And I remember speaking to our reporters saying, what are they waiting for? They've done the same thing with Rafah here, and the US has constantly said you can't go in for this full offensive of Rafah. But then if you do that and you wait, then you give Hamas the advantage, and they can regroup, they can escape from Rafah. Whereas if they go in and they're indiscriminate, or whatever you want to call it, civilians are going to die there regardless. But that's war, and it's a horrible thing to say, but that is going to happen in war. But whenever Israel does it, they're held. It almost feels like they're held to a higher standard, whereby they have to almost be flawless to do it, and they've certainly not been flawless. And I do think, I feel the worm is starting to turn now with the international community, and Israel may kind of find themselves in a situation where they might have to go to a negotiating table where their hand isn't as strong as they thought it was, maybe as close as a few weeks ago.
Yeah, it's a tough lose-lose situation there.
Yeah.
Well, Chris, thank you so much for being here today. You can get more reporting from Chris and the rest of the political team at washingtonexaminer.com.